So why don't we ask questions? I think one of the biggest ones is that we simply are afraid to ask questions. Right? Perfect example. Some of this may have happened to you. Ask me a question. Any question. Go ahead.
How's your afternoon?
How's my afternoon? Why did you ask that question? That's the most stupidest, most moronic question I ever had. Don't you ever ask that question again in my class, and I'll kick you out. Oh my God. Don't you think that's a stupid question? And what does it do? That polarizes that person. I'm quite sure she'll probably keep that all the way until she dies. She's like, I remember when Mrs. Schwanek said. And you do. But also, too, is what happens to all the other students as well. It provides an environment that nobody better ask a question from this. And then probably the guy for the next 20 years teaching. Nobody asks a question because, of course, they're terrified. We build this environment that, hey, look, don't ask a question. Or all too many times is that you will ask a question and the person feels uncomfortable because, number one, they may not know how to answer the question. They're not using critical thinking to be able to maybe ask questions about, is it clear or can you clarify it? I need some more information. Of course, so they muddle through it, and then, of course, they simply do not give you the answer. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to ask another question again because apparently he doesn't know the answers. He can't give me the information. Because remember, questions gives you information. It allows you to bring it into your mind and use critical thinking to discern it, to break it down into pieces, and if needed, ask another question. Ask a question to clarify, to elaborate. I need more information. That purpose sounds a little bit muddy. Can you clarify it? I need more information. Can you tell me other concepts that deal or impact on this area? So again, too, is that when we have somebody up here and they're not, again, we just don't feel like asking questions. I'll look foolishly if I ask a question. How many times have you done that? Even though the person's up here in the typical verse at the beginning of any type of course is, hey, always ask a question. The only stupid questions and not one answer. And then, of course, the question's asked, and it's like, oh, that's really funny. People start laughing, and again, you just kind of crunch in, close into your little world, and you never ask another question for the next 20 years. Not only in education, but also, too, you find in work. And we're all sitting here, we're all talking about a process, and people start to ask questions. Hey, Mr. Schmoniak, what about this? You said that we're going to have to go ahead and put this widget on here. We're going to have to cut it down to 0.05 of an inch. What is the whole purpose behind it? And all of a sudden you simply get these answers. Well, don't worry about that. Your job is simply to do that. And it's like, wow, you're trying to get more information. You're trying to understand these concepts at work. And what happens, again, this environment, either where it makes you feel foolish asking a question, or again, it provides an environment, a negative environment that you don't really want to ask questions. And it continues throughout your life. When you go buy a car, when you go buy a house, when you decide to get married. How many times? I love you. How many questions do you really ask? Really neat book, Amazon.com. And no, I'm not a representative for Amazon.com. Great book for those of you that are looking at getting married. The book is called 101 Questions to Ask Your Future Spouse. And that's just the beginning. But again, too, it's this environment. Sometimes it simply figures, well, I'm not going to ask a question because someone will ask a question. This person right here always answers the question, so why should I ask it? She's going to answer them and they'll be okay. Really. And throughout life, we're always waiting for that one person to answer a question, and that may not be the question that we have. I'll wait for a more appropriate time, or my questions, again, will make waves, or they'll upset someone. And of course, if you're upsetting the person that's actually presenting, or they give you a scowl, you feel like 2 inches tall, and you never want to ask another question in your life. So, we built up this environment, going through, conditioned. We also have in education, the way that we actually learn. You sit here, I stand up here, it's instructor-centered, I will teach, you will listen, you will write notes, you will do everything. And then I'll give you a test, an objective test, a midterm, and a final exam. And again, to where do we ever ask questions? And here's a question that I have for you. And like the last week, if you could think of a couple classes that you had, how many questions were asked? Relevant questions, just not yes and no, but thought-provoking questions were asked in your classes. It's amazing what people like, I don't remember. So, again, too, this is the environment they have to work with, okay? But if you take a look at this little small wheel down here where it talks about questions, is again, too, is one of the most important part, too, about asking questions is We ask questions, but we need to be able to actively listen. We need to listen what the person is saying. We need to find out exactly what they're trying to articulate, their thoughts, their feelings. It doesn't mean you're going to be a mind reader, but for you to ask questions, you've got to be able to actively listen. And anybody will tell you, communications, listening, oh yeah, I can listen, I'm a really good listener. And of course, he's standing in front of you and you almost have to slap him in the head and say, hey, you listening to me? Oh, I wasn't paying attention. Distractions, you have the communication process, sender and receiver, all sorts of distractions, inward, I didn't understand what you said. So again, we really have to be active listeners if we're going to be able to ask questions and to be able to get information. So active listening is very important. Okay? If you look at the right-hand side of your little handout, Paul and Elder actually come up with 3 different kinds of questions. I have a small book, and it's really great, bought it online, and it has 75 different types of questions. And they're really neat. But I want to talk about, just in general, these 3 types of questions. 3 types of questions that you can ask, or that you usually get from me, or that you usually see. One of the first ones is simply a one-system type of question. It requires evidence and reasoning within a system. And there's only one correct answer. What's an example of this? What is the element on the periodic tables of element? What is the element that its symbol or its number, sequential number, is 2 on the periodic elements of table? Now, what? It's fact. There's only one correct answer. Okay? Or better yet, like this. What is the boiling what is the boiling point for water? Okay? There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There is a factual system. There's only one correct answer. So that's one system. That's one way that we can ask questions. Okay? It's very specific. There's no kind of in-between here. But then we have one what's called a no system. And this calls for stating a subjective preference, a subjective opinion, such as like this. When we're finished here, is Mary going to take you to Church's Chicken, or would you like to go to Church's Chicken, or would you like to go to El Patos? See, what do we have here? We have a question of preference. Okay? So, what do you like to take? Do you like to take biology, or would you like to take humanities? Would you like to work this shift or that shift? So there is a preference, and it's subjective. And what I mean by subjective and objective, objective is specific. There is one right answer. When we start to develop subjectivity, it opens up a wide area of information and facts. And again, too, the answer is not always very clearly stated, or that the answer is going to have a lot of play area as far as what you conceive or what you prefer as, well, I want to go to Church's because I wanted chicken. I haven't had chicken in 3 or 4 days. See, that's very subjective. It's not like, the best restaurant for chicken and its nutrition is what? Church's Chicken. But again, too, is that we have a system here. We have one system. Here we have no system. And again, it's specific to an opinion.